Hello, I'm Blackbright, as you know, and this video is for my subscribers mainly because I know many of you look forward to seeing me in the mornings or in the evenings or whenever it is I come on. And I wanted to warn you basically that you might see a withdrawal only because I do not feel I would be able to deliver guidance messages if with enthusiasm. And I entitled this video Death Becomes Her because I got news this morning that my mother is palliative. I went to see her yesterday. She didn't look great. Her skin still looked beautiful. No wrinkles at 94. But I could tell from her the way she was lying there and she, sleeping all the time and not eating properly. I could tell that it wouldn't be long. Glad to say she's not dying of the coronavirus. I'm glad to say that it's just probably old age. And I really believe the lockdown has got a lot to answer for. Because when you think of widows, they depend on human touch of their grandchildren, of their children. That's what, the hugs, the kisses, the holding of the hands, the sitting in the laps, and all of those things. And when that is taken away, through the lockdown, and the elderly were seen as lepers almost, you couldn't go near them. Can you imagine how they felt without that human touch, without being able to see those little faces, without being able to see the smiles? Can you imagine what that does for them? And for me, I think my mother, that was what contributed. It accelerated her demise. I don't think that if there wasn't that lockdown and she hadn't been deprived of all those little children, and some of them are adults, but they were always doting on her, around her, serving her, worshipping her, and that is what my mother lived for. My mother lived for adoration. She's a very proud woman, and she loved it when they were all around her, telling her stories and their life experiences. And as much as my mother was 94, she was a very open-minded woman. I'm talking to her in the past, but I should be talking to her in the present. She is still alive at this moment. So she is a very open-minded woman. So I'm just waiting for that call, as I said. What else I wanted to do? I wanted to tell you that I do not want to be pitied. I don't want to see a lot of messages below. Not that I'm not grateful for your thoughts, but at this time where I feel quite emotional, I think it just it would just, like when you're at school and you've got something bothering you and then somebody hugs you and they pat you on the shoulder and say, are you okay? And you burst into tears. That is what I feel messages will do. I feel as though it's going to kind of accelerate or make me feel worse, to be honest. And like I said, she hasn't gone yet. I'm just preparing myself for when it comes. I just wanted to share with you what I feel grateful for during this time. I feel grateful that she does not have the coronavirus. I feel grateful that she opted out of organ removal. I feel grateful that she's going to have a relatively dignified funeral because the lockdown has been partially lifted. She might not be able to get her white horse and carriage that she spent so much money on, but at least she can have a funeral with the main members of her family. I'm grateful that she was well cared for. And yesterday, what moved me more than anything else was the district nurses came around and the way they were so caring. And yes, they didn't have proper, medical PPE equipment. They did just have the regular masks that we wear and a little apron and their gloves, but they were there. And they just went in and they did what they needed to do with my mum, turn her over, saw to her whatever she needed having seen to. And they did it without any kind of scornfulness or fear. They were just relentless. And I just thought about the NHS, and I just thought how grateful I am for them, how wonderful they are. I mean, those district nurses, I mean, you have family members who are afraid to go in and see their loved ones because they fear of catching the virus, or because what the media tells us. So we kind of stay on the outskirts, and we perpetuate that. We make it worse by keeping our distance. And when you see the district nurses going in with nothing more than a little face mask and aprons and gloves, and they are getting close. Okay, my mother hasn't got the virus, but they don't know that. They don't know that. So I just thought they are real heroes. And I will clap at 8 o'clock, whenever that time is, because they are absolutely fantastic. And they were saying that they're going to increase their visits from 2 till 3. And I thought to myself, just look at that. Sometimes I'm at home and I worry about her because I live so far away. And, and I think to myself, we've had the lockdown and all of that. And I just thought of that, and I just said, it is absolutely phenomenal what they do. So that is another thing I'm grateful for. My mother never wanted to go into a residential home. So my brother and his partner have been looking after her, and it has not been easy because my mother is disabled. She only has one leg. She's a big woman, so she's hard to move. And she reached a point where she had arthritis in her arms and her legs, so she was in constant pain, and it was hard for them to move her and shift her, and she got to a point where she lost her mobility. So it hasn't been easy, but we've managed to keep her wishes. We've managed not to put her in a nursing home, which she begged us not to do. So we managed to do that, and she will die at home, which is fantastic. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that she was able to have all what she wanted towards the end. She didn't want to die in the way she did, but she was forever talking about Psalm 27. Not talking, reciting Psalm 27, the protective prayer. And she did that, before the lockdown. And I don't think she's been able to do it since, because she's just stopped eating. She won't drink much, and I think she's just given up. My mother has been kind of in between the will to live and wanting to die. And I think now she wants to die. And, I think she doesn't want to be a burden anymore. And that's how she's feeling at the moment. She's reached a point where she cannot do anything for herself. But to me, she still looks beautiful. Her skin was flawless. Not one wrinkle at 94. That's hard to believe. And nobody would believe that. And I wish I'd taken a photograph of her yesterday, but I didn't. And plus, that's not how I want to remember her, to be honest. So, what else did I want to say? Yeah, I'm always told I'm strong at this moment. I'm not particularly strong. I feel quite weak. And I'm doing this because when she passes, I'm not quite sure how I'm going to feel or what I'm going to do. I know that I do not want any, apart from my family, I do not want any company other than that. And, I don't want to be bombarded with telephone calls and that kind of stuff, because I know myself. Times like this, I go inward and I just want to deal with it as best as I can by myself. And, when I feel strong, when I feel strong, I may even do a video, and depending on how I feel, I'll see how I go. I do have a strong family network, so I'm not alone. And so I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful that, I'm able to look after my 2 grandchildren while my daughter is with my mum. So I don't have to go through that. Some people want to go and see their parents in their final hour. I don't want to do that. I saw her yesterday. I don't need to be sitting there waiting for her to die. So I was going to read the eulogy. I don't know if that is appropriate, but I read it all the same. My mother was a beautiful woman, even though she did not acknowledge it or believe it when I told her so. She would always acknowledge she was proud, but never that she was beautiful. My mother was a woman of God and loved Jesus. She constantly recited Psalm 27. The Lord is the light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked, even mine enemies and my foes, came upon me to eat my flesh, they stumbled and fell. Though a host should encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war should rise against me, in this will I be confident. I remember the last time her reciting it in full on her own was before the lockdown around the 15th of March. My mother thrived on company, and the lockdown took away from her lovely grandchildren who motivated her to live. And while she had her son Michael and her partner looking after her needs, the variety of faces, expressions, and need for human contact had been taken away. We underestimate the need for human contact, the hugs, the squeeze without which we die slowly. My mother always told me that God answered her every need. Whenever she needed something, he would satisfy that need. People looking at my mother during her last days would say, what a way to go. Such a proud and dignified woman dying, relying on others. But even in her last days, her face radiated beauty. Her skin was as smooth as silk. During her last days, she had people who cared about her. She was in her home, which was her wish. She did not want to be placed in a nursing home, and as difficult as it was, my brother and his wife respected that wish. Her greatest accomplishment was buying her home, and her second greatest accomplishment was paying off her mortgage, and knowing that when she passed, her two sons would have a place to live without having any money to pay. My mother had two main wishes: that she would not be put into a home, and that she would not have to worry about my two brothers when she passed on, because she had provided them with a home that was paid for, so they would both have roof over their heads. In satisfying her needs, God also saw to it that she died during a time when the lockdown had been lifted, partially, so that more people could be at her bedside in a less restricted way, that she could enjoy the dignity of a funeral. As painful as her last days were, with arthritis and helplessness, my mother was still caressed by God through those around her. We must not feel sorry for Mum. She had a long, good, healthy life for the most part, and I often wonder if the lockdown never happened, whether she would have deteriorated in the way that she did. People might say 94 years old, she's lived her life, but my mother was a healthy woman, a strong woman, and a resolute woman. It had nothing to do with age. It had to do with the loss of warmth of human touch through hugs, which is what kept her going after the death of her husband. We thought we were losing her on the 16th of May, but she pulled through. My mother was constantly fighting between living and dying. A part of her wanted to live and hold on to life, and another part of her wanted to let go. Living always won. When she reached the point where she lost all dignity and all power to help herself, she knew it was time to go. Living so far away, my fear of driving on the M1 as I got older meant I failed my mother in a lot of ways. Whenever I got to Mum, I was thinking about driving home and whether I would get back safely. I never felt I spent long enough with my mother. I always felt I left her wanting. Sorry, Mum. However, the last time I saw her, I didn't feel I left her wanting. I felt that just being there was enough. Now she is at peace. Remember, this is a eulogy. Hopefully dancing with the angels. Hopefully she has found Leo, her husband, and they are flying over Buckingham Palace to see the Queen, because that is always what she said she wanted to do. For me, my mother was and will always be a power of influence in my life. I will always hear her little quips, her jokes, the way she made jokes about adversity. Even when they amputated her leg, she made a joke of it and called it stubby. I will always hear her squeals of laughter and comments about my hair. I will always remember how surprised I was at her open-mindedness. I'm grateful that she is relieved of pain and discomfort. I love my mother very much. Maybe not in the way she wanted me to love her, but I loved her in the best way I could. I'm just grateful that I was able to understand her better over the years, but would have loved to have had the opportunity to understand her more. So that is my eulogy, and I did that when I thought I'd lost her on the 15th of May. So yes, over the last couple of weeks I've been struggling through these videos, and but I've been doing them all the same, and so that is why I'm not sure how I'm going to be. So I thought I'd share this video with you. Yes, it's personal, but I think it's important for us sometimes to share that part of us that is so difficult to share. Bye-bye.